Welcome back, everyone. Joining me now is host of the Michael Savage podcast and author of God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage. Michael, glad to have you with us tonight. Obviously, a nation in mourning right now, the loss of these 3 children and these 3 staffers at that school in Tennessee. I want to get your take, though, because amid this tragedy, there are heroes, and those heroes are these 2 officers who took out Audrey Hale in just a matter of minutes. Officers Rex Engelbert and Michael Collazo, they entered that school, opened fire on Audrey Hale after locating her on the 2nd floor. Tell us what you make of their ability to act so quickly and save countless lives.
Well, walking into gunfire is about the most counterintuitive act a person can engage in. So these people are very unique individuals. I can guarantee you they didn't grow up on the Upper East Side or in Beverly Hills. You know, the lack of orthodonture and putting off Christmas presents and working for jobs when you're a kid tends to make you into a tougher man. And these are the toxic males that the left wing hates so much in this country. And if it wasn't for these toxic white males, more children would be dead. Let's never forget that. It's toxic masculinity that stopped more from being slaughtered. These are some of the bravest Americans I've ever seen. And I watched them go down the hall. I was amazed. It was like watching a movie about special forces taking on Al-Qaeda or taking on, 3, 2, 1, on my right, on my left. Now, what's interesting here is that the shooter was still shooting after he or she had been shot, this individual, this mentally deranged trans child killer. And I don't want to go past the mentally deranged trans child killer too quickly. We read, Jen, all of us, that this trans killer was being treated for an emotional disorder. Well, I guess the treatment didn't work, did it? This is about the most cowardly act that an individual can engage in. If this psychopath wanted to kill people with semi-automatic weapons and body armor, whatever else she had on her, she should have gone into the worst drug-infested neighborhood in Nashville, of which there were quite a few, and taken on some of the drug dealers, where perhaps it wouldn't have resulted in the death of 3 9-year-old children and 3 other innocent people. So how did this lunatic legally buy 7 or more guns? There's a lot of blame to go around, but I want to talk about what drugs are being pumped into our children. You can't find out, Jen. I did some research for your show tonight. This is a subject near and dear to my heart. Back in 1983, I did a book called Healing Children Naturally, and one of my -- things was stop pumping drugs into our children. 1983, I said if Tom Sawyer were alive today, they'd put him on Ritalin and tell us that he had ADD. That's what they did with people in those days. So now let's ask ourselves about this deranged trans child killer. Here is a biological female who wants to be a male. So it's rational for us to assume that amongst the drugs that she was being given was testosterone. So we have to ask, how does supplemental testosterone, which I would guess logically she was put on by her, quote, doctor, how does testosterone interact with Abilify, Zoloft, Luvox, or any other antidepressant that this individual may have been on? This deranged trans shooter, which I'll keep repeating until someone actually hears me, because it's been brushed away. It's like, oh, we can't say deranged trans shooter. Do you know I was just thrown off Twitter before I came on the air, Jen? I went on Twitter. No. I couldn't believe it. They blocked my account for putting up violent content. I said, what?
Elon Musk's Twitter blocked Michael Savage.
They did for posting violent content. And all I did was link these stories and stories related to it about drugs. And I don't think it was the shooting pictures that they blocked me for, Jen. I think it was from talking about the pharmaceutical drugs that this deranged trans lunatic was on, because nobody will talk about that.
Let me pause you there. You're making such a great point, but I want our audience to hear from the Nashville police chief, who also mentioned that there's obviously mental health was a factor in what happened in Nashville. Let's listen to Police Chief John Drake here.
She was under care, doctor's care, for an emotional disorder. Law enforcement knew nothing about the treatment she was receiving, but her parents felt that she should not own weapons.
So let me ask you, Michael, you're a father. You hear so many situations where you have these school shootings where a parent felt like their child who committed these awful acts, there were red flags, there were situations that in this case, they feel like she shouldn't have had these weapons. She should have been, receiving more treatment. What can these parents do that say, you know what, there's something wrong with my kid? There's got to be some easier way, some better way for them to report these situations before it escalates to a mass shooting.
You're 100% right, but look what's gone on in this country. Up until 2012, all the mass shootings I researched, and I have over 15 of them right here, they released medical records after the shooting showing the relationship between psychiatric drugs and the mass shooter. I have them right here going back to 2001, and it shows the treatments. You cannot find any of the treatments that these people are on after 2010, 10 or 11 or 12. So I think we need to call right now on your show for medical records to be released after every school shooting. And I don't want to hear any more bull crap, pardon me, any more bull from the medical doctor saying, oh, that's private information. It's not private information when you execute 9-year-old children like this. It's time America stood up to the drug lobby. The drug lobby, the drug lobby, the drug lobby. I want to know what drugs this deranged trans shooter was on and how these drugs interacted with testosterone, which I assume logically she was also on to be a man.
Right.
And I also want to know why we are not being told what she was being treated for and how she bought a gun. Look, I'm a gun owner.
Michael,
in order for me to buy a gun,
they need to release all of that information, no question about it.
Yeah.
We have to take a quick break, a quick pause here, Michael. We're going to come back with more. We'll be right back. But first, let's watch this hot mic moment. This is from President Biden, proving that handlers need to control his every move. This is real, folks. Watch. Stay with us.
Your mark is going to be the blue one to the left.
How y'all doing?
You've got a blue mark, and that's okay.
I'll stand my blue mark, and then I'm going to say load each one of you.
Yes, sir. I'll help you get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to Prime News. We are here with Dr. Michael Savage. Michael, I want you to weigh in on this story out of Detroit. It's at Wayne State University, where a college professor has now been placed on leave after suggesting online that shouting down conservative speakers on campus is not good enough. In fact, he thinks it's okay to murder them. Let that sink in for a minute. Murder them. Michael, why does the left think that inciting violence or even murder is all right?
Of justice that targets school board parents instead of psychopaths like him. Let us be very clear. Right now, the left is targeting conservatives and Christians. Where is the DOJ? Instead of targeting parents who go to school board meetings to stop the pollution of our young children by trans dancers or whatever, they're targeting them instead of targeting people who are saying they're going to kill. Now, let's not forget Jane Fonda in this mix, Hanoi Jane. She came back from the grave at age 81, like from the crypt, and called for the death of conservatives. Remember that about a week ago?
We have a clip of that. We have a clip. Let's roll it so our viewers can see in case they missed it. You have to see it to believe it. Watch.
Okay.
Besides marching and protesting, what else do you suggest?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a miraculous. What did you say?
Murder. She's kidding.
Funny. Very funny.
She continued even when pressed on it.
This whole old Hollywood degenerate has the nerve to say that on national television. And A, she's not censored. B, the show is not censored. C, she's not thrown off Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. We're living in a distorted reality. But she's not alone. You mentioned this so-called professor. We did a little research on Stephen Shaviro at Wayne State, who said this on Facebook, that it's okay to kill right-wingers who are speaking on campuses. We have the whole quote. We won't bore you with it. And he gives a whole double talk on why it's okay to kill them. But we looked into this lunatic, how he's even on a college. Listen what his Twitter handle is. Stealth assassin from the clouds, he calls himself, Jen.
Wow.
Stealth assassin from the clouds, and he's still on Twitter. I got banned for, I think, putting this up there. Listen, Stealth Assassin from the Clouds was his Twitter handle, and he's into music video. He calls himself a kitsch Marxist. Hello. and sex negative, Detroit, Michigan, USA, Mr. Shaviro. So Shaviro.
Wow. And Michael, on top of that, MIT Press has published 2 of his books, one as recently as 2021. He also holds a bachelor's, master's, and a PhD from none other than Yale University. Imagine that.
Of course it's Yale. Where else it could be? Either Yale or Stanford. I almost said Stale University because that's what they become. It's no longer Yale or Stanford. It's Stale University. I mean, I know a lot of people who went to Stanford when it counted. It's garbage right now, and so is Yale. They let in all the lunatics of the world. This guy has the nerve to publish a thing that he thinks is so clever. He says, here's what I think about free speech on campus, says Mr. Shaviro, the stealth assassin from the clouds. He says, although I do not advocate violating federal and state criminal codes, I think it is far more admirable to kill a racist, homophobic, or transphobic speaker than it is to shout them down. He's still on Twitter. He's not in prison. Where is our attorney general now? That's what I want to know.
And Michael, you have to wonder, how many others, I'm not saying everybody on a college campus who's liberal advocates this kind of violence, but you look at what happened to that Trump-appointed judge that visited Stanford University and the dean there just berating him. You look at what happened, this was at UC Davis. Charlie Kirk was speaking. These people tried to bust down the doors. I think we have footage of that. Our own Joe Bob, who comes on every Monday, he's got footage of them trying to break down the doors there. I mean, this is becoming a regular occurrence on college campuses, and it's not helping that these administrators are supporting it in a sense.
Well, I'm proud to say that I'm a pioneer in having been canceled because I'm the only member of the American media who was canceled from an entire nation in 2009. I'm still not allowed to go to Britain for things I allegedly said, which I actually didn't say. And when we spent $400,000 to investigate why they were canceling me from entering Britain, that's a form of violence too, actually, not letting you enter an entire nation. They actually put me on a banned list, a list of banned people with Russian skinheads who would beat immigrants to death with sticks, Muslim fanatics who called for the death of the Queen. I was put on a list, and when we sued the government, after a year, Jen, you know what we found? That the then prime minister, I think it was Gordon or something, he said we need to balance the list because we have Muslims on it. We have to put a Jew on it. I was the person who was targeted. I still cannot go to Britain and enjoy the fabulous cuisine or get their famous dental care. I'm still denied the famous dental care. Hey, Michael,
let me ask you this. Did you see the news recently that Hillary Clinton is going to be teaching a course? I think it's at Columbia University. She did this big video about it. I want to know when Michael Savage is going to get inside a classroom because I think so many young minds could benefit from all that you could teach them.
I reach more people on I reach more people on Newsmax TV in one show than I would in a classroom in probably 2 years. On any one of my podcasts, I reach more people in a week than I would have in my entire life teaching at Berkeley. So, there's a balance somewhere in nature. And although I was banned or blocked from teaching, banned from entering Britain, whatever, the fact of the matter is God has been very, very nice to me and has given me an outlet through Newsmax TV now, which I love. And by the way, Mr. Ruddy is just so kind to me to let me on this network. And I have to say, it sounds like I'm doing a little brown nosing here, but I really love the fact.
We love having you.
No, at this stage of my career, Jen, that I have an opportunity to express my views. I must tell you this. So I'm at a dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
Listen, you may be the same age as Joe Biden, but again, totally different. Joe Biden is like decades, beyond and gone, and you're brighter than most people half your age, Michael.
That's kind coming from you, Jen. You know how much I appreciate your compliments and what they do for me at my age. But Jen, having said that, one last funny line. So there was a famous person at the table at the Trump dinner, and he said to me, he's a conservative now. He said, Michael, 20 years ago when you first started in radio, we all thought you were crazy. But as time has gone on, it turns out you were a prophet. I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But see if that and $1.25 will get me on the subway. It's that kind of thing. But they all thought I was nuts in the beginning. And the fact is the things I said turned out to be true. Unfortunately, I wish it was not so. Before you go, and I don't think you have much time left here. Okay. Trans activists called for day of vengeance before shooting of Christian school. I'm sure you saw that story. Day of vengeance by trans activists, and it's being organized by Antifa. It's the Trans Radical Activist Network. Just what America needs at this time, isn't it, Jen? Exactly what we need is a day of rage. A day of rage by a bunch of lunatics on drugs.
And we had Andy No on, who's just an expert on all things Antifa, and talked about just the support that this killer was getting on Twitter. Michael, it's sick what's happening in this country. Thank goodness we have people like you. We need to hear more from people like you. Michael Savage, we do have to leave it there, but we'll see you. We'll see you again soon. I think probably Thursday.
I brought you a prop.
What do you have there before we go?
I brought it because I'm in Florida, and this is an image of what I think of this psychopath who did this thing. This is too good an image for it. But this is the horrible image that should be left in people's minds. That person was not a victim nor a hero. She, he, whatever, was one of the most cowardly forms of humanity that must never, ever be forgotten.
Well said. Michael Savage, we'll leave it there. Thank you, my friend.